ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. I wonder what the face of the PLO looks like for you. Uh, we're a bit more diverse than just that. Just as any peoples actually, or any organization. So definitely what I want to raise is that the picture is not monolithic. There's a spectrum of views and opinions, and ultimately what matters is precisely what practically happens on the ground and how do people feel. Do people feel that their rights of self-determination are actually recognized and they're able to exercise it?
You are still a part of echo.
He's saying there's an echo problem, Max.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't hear you. Yeah.
Sorry about that. It's new technology. Sorry about it, guys.
We should start somewhere, definitely.
Yeah.
Just first to start, I'm the general director at the PLO delegation. I'm not officially a spokesperson. Thank you for having me. The ambassador unfortunately could not make it today, so he sent me. I used to work as an advisor to the Palestinian negotiators from 2003 to 2008, so I'm very familiar with the intimate details of the negotiations in the Annapolis process. And a lot of what I'm bringing in is actually from personal experience. Another piece of disclosure I should point out is that actually my sister is a one-stater. So we have this joke in the family where she works on one state, I work on the two state, and whoever gets there first becomes president and makes the other one prime minister. So that's just in full disclosure. However, why is that important? Because I think what matters is it doesn't matter if it's a two state or one state, because if we have two states and both states are racist, that's not a solution. And if we have one state and we still have groups that are being discriminated against, that's also not a solution. So when you hear people, whether in the Palestinian leadership or otherwise, who are formally two-staters, who are saying that they might go to the one state, that's coming from a place of frustration. That's coming from a place where if we've been invested in this two-state solution, and again, I would like to remind people, the Palestinian position has shifted from the official position of liberation of all of historic Palestine with acceptance of, like in the early 70s, the threshold was that any Jewish person that was there before the Balfour Declaration of 1917 would be accepted in that democratic state, and to have a secular democratic state where all citizens are equal, right? Not necessarily a binational state, which is different. And in the 70s, early 70s, they started shifting towards the two-state solution out of practical considerations. They realized that practically the international system would not allow for that platform, so they started shifting towards a two-state solution because they came to the conclusion that it's better at least to have a piece of land where Palestinians can have a place where they can exercise their right to self-determination, and if the price of that is to give up a big chunk of our historical homeland, then that is it. And similarly, from the Zionist perspective, there are a lot of Zionists that believe, as you said, in heiress Israel and in bigger Israel. And there is a school of thought that said, no, let's have a smaller one that is more secure and has a greater majority of Jews, precisely for the point that you said, that there is a Jewish experience for thousands of years where when they are not a majority, it really hinges on the goodwill of whoever is a majority, and that is not something that you can assure over generations, right? So that's a position where it's a vulnerable position. In similar ways, the Palestinians also seek a state of their own. Like when I talk to my colleagues and my friends and my relatives actually about the two-state solution and the one-state solution, there is this need to have our own state. Like even with the idea of confederation with Jordan, they're actually very resistant to it because they want a state of their own where they can be Palestinian and nobody would deal with their business. Again, from an experience of exile and vulnerability and lack of security, right? So when people support the two-state solution, I agree with you. They might believe that historically all of Palestine is Palestinian and there was a big transgression that's happened to the Palestinian people. They seek the two-state solution because they feel this is a practical solution that has a high probability of success. Now, the fact of 20 years attempting at that solution and not getting there, in fact seeing facts on the ground that are moving exactly in the opposite direction, has resulted in a lot of people feeling frustrated and feeling that there is no point in trying to seek that solution. However, you still have a majority in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip that would like the two-state solution, But there is also a majority that believe it's not possible, right? So that's the contradiction. And similarly in Israel, you have a majority that finds the two-state solution desirable, but that majority also believes that that solution is highly unlikely. So it's a question of faith in the possibility and not in the desirability of the solution. And again, why is that important? I think because while I applaud your efforts and others in seeking to think of ideas outside the box, I think the ultimate test is what actually works on the ground, what actually people want. Because from our experience, again, from actual negotiations, as much as even being involved in second tracks where a group of Palestinians and a group of Israelis sat and tried to think of solutions, when push came to shove, people started thinking, okay, so what is really important for us in Jerusalem? What is really important about refugees? What is really important in the boundaries? What kind of boundaries do we want, right? And when they came to those conclusions, they started realizing that they are willing to give something on refugees in return to get something else on Jerusalem, for example, right? So there are these calculations that have to do with the people that are there. And that's another differentiation that we need to make between the Palestinians and the Israelis in the diaspora and those that are living there, right? They have different priorities, even the Palestinians and Israelis in Jerusalem compared to Palestinians other places. Why am I raising this? Because I think what is important is to, and which I guess is very similar to what you're doing, is bringing the politics back to the grassroots and moving it away from, I guess what I'm saying is exceptionally undiplomatic, but moving it away from just the leaders on both sides. Because from, again, my personal experience here in the negotiations is that the leaders actually are changed. They do not have a big room for maneuver. They could come with great ideas to bridge gaps, but ultimately neither leaders from either side are able to sell those ideas back to their constituencies. And I think our homework is to try to bring back that politics back to the grassroots, because there's, again, one is because that brings ownership over the process, and there is less that skepticism over what the politicians are bringing. A lot of the failures in previous peace processes or talks was because both populations distrusted their leaders in the process. But the second thing is, again, from our experience, when you involve the people that have a stake, the people on the boundary, like, again, my experience with people in Bilain and Budros and other places, they actually are creative. They actually know what is or is not feasible, what works or doesn't work. Like, Jerusalemites are the best negotiators on Jerusalem because they understand what is and is not important in Jerusalem and what works and what doesn't work, because they've been living there for so long and they've been living together. So they're more familiar with the intricacies, but also with what I think is more important in that golden mean. They understand what the golden mean is. So I would want to end at the importance of engaging the larger populations on both sides, and engaging from, as you said, like thinking outside the box of what is really important to us, and not just being wedded to conventional wisdom and conventional narratives about the other side and what it wants and what it doesn't want. No, we need to engage everyone, and we have to have open dialogue. We should. I mean, we do disagree, but we need to understand their point of view from them directly, and they need to understand our point of view from us directly, and not from a secondary or tertiary source.